Hi, my name is Steve Snap. I want to thank you for joining me. Today we're going to talk about making seed balls. And the basic idea of a seed ball is you take seed, you take compost, you take clay, and you can do it manually. I've been researching how to do it with a cement mixer, which I think you can see here. And the basic idea is to mix in those three ingredients, and I guess you could say four ingredients if you include water, and then obviously to make little balls out of it. So I'm going to go through that process, how to do it. First thing is, I'm going to start with the compost. So I'm just using a normal compost material. I don't know if you can see that. It's just, it says it's cow manure compost. And I'm going to go ahead and fill this up. Now what I'm going to basically do is do 20 cups of compost, 20 cups of clay, and 4 cups of seed. So to do that, I'm going to fill this up to the 5-quart mark with compost, and then I'm going to filter it. So the first thing you want to do is sift or filter the compost, then put the clay, and then put the seeds. And then once you have all that done, you start the mixing process. So, and what I'm going to do first is just, like I said, sift this. So I've got a just a piece of hardware cloth, and this is 1/4 inch, or no, keep saying that, it's 1/2 inch. And I'm just going to slowly pour this in there. I don't want the whole thing to go in because I don't want it to all, spill out. We pretty much have all of the compost in there now. Usually what I'll do here now is I'll take off the screen and throw that in the trash. Now I'm going to do the clay, but I could not find clay during the whole COVID thing. Couldn't buy it online, it was crazy. So I found this at a feed store, and it's a little bit lighter clay than I think most people recommend, but I've done some testing, and I'll show you some of the results, and I think it's actually worked out really, really well. So I'll share some of that as we get going. Okay, it's about 5 quarts there. It's hard to see with the white clay, but I can see it there. Put the clay in. And then now I'm going to go ahead and mix in 4 cups of seed. I'm going to take 4 cups. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Just kind of start the mixer. Don't have to mix it very long. I just kind of when I get it mixed up a little bit. My goal here is really just to kind of get a consistent color. Still, you can still kind of see the compost a little bit. Okay guys, so we've got all of the compost, the seeds, and the clay all mixed. And I usually just let it run for a few moments when I'm doing this. And I just kind of get it kind of where I want it in terms of mixture. I'm going to just kind of clean this up a little bit because as soon as I start putting water in here, it's going to start to clamp up a little bit more. So just kind of start to scrape it, and I'll just kind of run it real quick. Okay, so usually when I first start adding the water, I've got this screen right here. I think it's 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch screen, and I will often throw this in there just to keep the balls from getting too big when I first start to add water. So I'll just toss that in. And I also have some clay on hand. If it starts to get too clumped up, then I can go ahead and put more clay in. The goal here is to add water until it starts to clamp up, and then once it gets clumped up and forming about, let's say, a dime or a 1/4 in size, then I don't want to add too much water. And then usually once I kind of have it with the size I want it, then I will add a little bit of clay just to sort of dry them off, and then that's what I end up taking out and laying out. So in this example, I've got the screen running in there. Now the funny thing about the shape of this mixer is I've tried to fill it up almost as much as I could. So I did some math and I kind of figured out, you can see here that at this setting, stuff's coming out a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start spraying at this setting. But one of the things to notice is that the balls tend to clump up and move to the front. So you'll have fine aggregate in the back and the balls up in the front. So with a perfectly round mixing tool, it probably would avoid that because this thing isn't perfectly round. So what I end up doing is the first set of seed balls that come up to the front, I'll usually break those up if they're clumping too much. Okay, so now I'm going to sort of slowly start to spray. I've got this thing set on mist. I don't know if you can see that there. So it's not, I'll just kind of show you, it's just a very fine mist. And I'll just slowly start to spray. And you'll see in the back there, it starts to clump up in the back. So I'm just going to spray for not even a few minutes. The key is not to rush it. If you go too fast with the water, it'll clump up quite a bit. So then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use my scraper and I'm just going to scrape the inside of this. And I'm just getting a little bit too much out the front. Sometimes I'll put a bin down there, but I don't want to waste what I'm doing. So now let's just kind of watch what happens. And I usually point my water towards the back corner that way. I'll kind of move it around a little bit, but you're going to see the larger pieces come up to the front anyway, because they're going to fall from the back and then roll up, and they're going to end up right here. So I don't want to put water right there because that's where the big pieces are anyway. And water will make the pieces bigger. So the water gives the whole mixture a little bit more sticking power, which makes the pieces bigger. Now here's the point where I start to slow down, because you'll see here they're starting to clump up a little bit. Still not too big. You know, this is about right. They're still really dry. There's still quite a bit of pieces from the compost in there. But you can start to see it's starting to clump up a little bit. So now you can see it's starting to clump. There's a couple of big pieces in there. Now this is where you got to be careful. It's starting to stick. You see I got quite a bit of wet material on the back. So if I put a ton of water in and then scrape it, I'm going to get all that water that's back there into this. So I'm just going to do a little bit more with the water. And part of that was because I felt it. Like the pieces weren't super wet yet. It was still pretty dry when I felt it. It's starting to get a little bit more damp. Like you can feel how wet it is in your hand. And when it starts to get really sticky in your hands, then you want to slow down. But you can start to see it's starting to clump up quite a bit. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my screen back in there. I left that out for a second. I'm going to do another scrape here. I'm going to scrape the front of this first because this tends to be a little bit drier, and that's the sticky part because that's kind of where my water was sitting. But you can start to see I haven't scraped the back yet, but we're starting to get some pretty good sized chunks, and they're pretty sticky. I can feel that. All right, so we're getting pretty good, starting to size up a little bit. A piece like this I'll break up. Now if I had put too much water in, these pieces would be tennis ball size, so the key there is adding the water slow, and then, you know, I can add more now, but if I had already added too much, then I'd just be sitting here for 20 minutes breaking all these up. So these are a little bit tiny, but I'm just kind of getting some of the big ones out before I go with another batch of another round of water. You can also see they're not super sticky. Like as I touch them, it's not like tons of stuff is ending up on my hands. And this is where you got to be really careful. So they're starting to get a little bit stickier. I don't know if you can see that super well. A couple big ones in there. I'll break these guys up. Now what I'm dealing with here is I still want these to clump up, but I want these to sort of stay the way they are. So I'm going to add a little bit of clay right here just to let these sort of solidify, and then I'm going to put some water back there. You'll notice too, I'm not getting a lot of sticking on the back now. So you see these are tiny back there, and then these are pretty good size up front. Again, I'm pretty sure that's because of the shape of the mixer. So I'm gonna try throwing in a little bit of clay back there. There's no science to this part, but I'm not gonna put the screen back in because these aren't really clumping up as much as I want. So, and it seems like the screen stays right there. So I'm going to go ahead and try a little bit more water. Now, I often get very impatient right about now, and I start zapping it with water, and then I get these huge chunks bigger than these. And right now, because I'm on video, I think I'm being patient. You see that big chunk? It went boom. The big old chunk got a bunch of water on it, clumped up, and so I stopped. You can also, I don't know, it's hard to see, but if you look, keep your eye back here, you can still kind of see what size they are. You can see these bigger ones up front. And those are really sticky. See, now it's getting on my fingers. So I'm going to try drying these off a little bit with some more clay. And obviously the goal is we want each seed or a group of seeds to have a pretty good layer of compost and clay. The clay keeps it together, obviously. It also keeps the insects and the birds away. And obviously just sort of slows down as the water hits the clay slowly deteriorates, and then see now it's less sticky. You're starting to see they're starting to kind of form up pretty good. The only problem I really have right now is I got a lot of small ones. All right, so I don't really want these to clump anymore. So I'm going to kind of finish them off with a little bit more clay, and then I'll go ahead and grab the bin and we'll go ahead and put them out. But you can see here, this is pretty much what we got. Not sure. Okay, let's go ahead and lay these out on a tarp and we'll go from there. And I just did one small little tarp because I'm just doing one batch. But if I was doing a bigger batch, I would do a much larger group. Spread these out, buddy. And so now what I'm going to do is just spread these out so they get quite a bit of sun. And then I won't get this on tape, but once these dry, I just essentially use the tarp to funnel them into a cardboard box or a bucket or whatever I'm going to use. And then we go. All right, and those will dry in a day or two, and they'll be ready to go.